Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Black Performance Project. This is an exciting episode. I'm Nicole Hodges Persley. You've hopefully been watching. If this is your first time with us, welcome. This is a performance style talk show where we sit around and talk about performance from an African American theatrical perspective. I am a professor of theater and performance. I'm also a director and actor. And we have a really fantastic roundtable of artists who work together and know one another in the field of Black performance. So we have Baron Kelly, and if you can say hi, the camera will go to you.
Hello.
Baron Kelly, who is actor, director, and professor of acting at University of Wisconsin-Madison. And we have Harvey Williams. Harvey, the sound will go.
Hello.
Harvey is the founder and executive director of KC Melting Pot Theater, where I am the artistic director, and I'm also a professor at the University of Kansas and the Department of American Studies and courtesy faculty in theater. So that's a lot of front loading of credits. We say that to say we are artists who are in this because we love Black performance, and we are now going to go over on this Oscars episode our predictions for the winners of the Academy Awards this year in 2021. So we're going to start off. Any favorites? We're going to start off with Best Actor and Best Actress. Then we're going to track you through all the way to Best Picture. We won't be doing production today, but we just thought that we would share kind of our notes of who we think is going to win the coveted Academy Award. So what do you think? Any folks kind of stretching out front for you all before I go over? We're going to go start with Best Actor. Anyone in your top two? Give me your top two. The camera just stays on me until you guys.
Okay, now who are our Best Actor?
Okay, so let's talk about Best Actor. We're going to set it up for you, audience. We have Chadwick Boseman for Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. We have Delroy Lindo for The Five Bloods. We have Anthony Hopkins for The Father. We have Riz Ahmed for Sound of Metal, and we have Gary Oldman for Mank.
Oldman. Gary Oldman.
You're going with Oldman.
No, not Oldham. Oldman.
Oldman. Oh, sorry, I misread it. Sorry, Gary Oldman. Thank you so much for that. Gary Oldman for Mank. So who are you going with? Anyone? Top two?
I would have to say, just from performance standpoint, I would have to put Anthony Hopkins on top.
Touchdown!
Because of the, it's a shame because he makes it seem so effortless. But when you think about that story and that character,
yep,
and the interactions he had to have with all of those performers on all those levels of insanity, so to speak, and repression, and it was pretty amazing, I thought.
I showed it to my class today because I wanted to get their reaction, and there were a few people, including myself, again, that broke down and cried during the movie. And it wasn't manipulative what happened. It was just, my God, it was just towering performance. I totally agree with you, Harvey.
I think it's one of the performances of his career. I think it is, I hope that he has more performances in him, but I think it was just a tour de force. It was basically a solo performance with all these supporting players around him. He was the whole film. He carried the whole film, and the supporting cast, Olivia Colman, others are just fantastic. But it was a riveting performance.
I've seen him on stage as well. So that whole, he's great. It's great. And
so we're all saying Anthony Hopkins. If things are in a perfect where all of the actors get what they deserve, it would be Anthony Hopkins. Now let's get down to of what we think might happen. Okay, and so our viewers are going to say, how could you say that? how could you say Anthony Hopkins?
Well, most probably won't even know who, you know.
But Chadwick Boseman, we understand our hearts are still mourning the loss of the inimitable Chadwick Boseman, and it was a very strong contender performance, and I think worthy of inclusion here. Do I think that the Oscar will go to Chadwick over anyone here? I think there's a really strong chance. Even though my heart will be broken for Anthony Hopkins, of course, I wish that Chadwick was still with us, but
I think because the Academy, I think that they will give the Oscar posthumously to Chadwick Boseman. That's just with everything that's happened over the past year, and to just put a nice little bow on all of this because he's winning all the awards. I think it's leaning toward him. If it doesn't, then Riz Ahmed is going to get it. But I think they will give it to Chadwick Boseman.
Riz Ahmed's performance was also riveting. I think that is, if I were to rank these in any order, it would go with Anthony Hopkins, Riz Ahmed, and then Chadwick Boseman. As far as what appealed to me as acting and craft and vitality and really beautiful storytelling, I love what they offered here. So we're gonna say
the Boseman. It's kind of like it's a separate category almost.
Yes.
You can't get away from the sentiment.
Correct.
On top of which, the performance was, it was a little bit, of a gripping performance. But again, considering the circumstances, and so it's just a kind of a different category that you can't deny. But then once again, if you're looking at, nuts and bolts, I still have to say Anthony Hopkins deserves it.
Touchdown.
All right, well, let's move on to our next category then. We're going to talk about the Best Actress category, which is a favorite for many. We have Viola Davis and Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. We have Andra Day and The United States versus Billie Holiday, Vanessa Kirby in Pieces of a Woman, Frances McDormand and Nomadland, and Carey Mulligan in Promising Young Woman. This is a very tough category across the board for me. I thought there were beautiful performances, fantastic craft. I think this is an actor group of wanting to see people just put together these really gritty, strong, thoughtful performances. Vanessa Kirby in Pieces of a Woman, it was just...
Oh, the first 25 minutes, yes.
Yeah, it was fantastic. We discussed Andra Day's performance in United States versus Billie Holiday at length. If you haven't seen that episode, please check it out on our YouTube channel. We dedicated a whole episode to the Andra Day performance as Billie Holiday. Viola Davis and Ma Rainey. I think we could obviously say we don't look at any of these performances as somehow unworthy of nomination. So any standouts for you all here?
Well, Andra Day stands out to me because that was her first one right out of the gate. And she did her own singing, certainly. And she certainly did a worthy effort right out of the gate. And so, but they'll probably give it to Viola Davis.
All right, so we've got one for Viola Davis. And you all need any clips to make any decisions? Any reminders? Where do you think you stand?
Yeah. Viola could legitimately win. That Viola could definitely legitimately win, as could any of these actresses. But Andra Day is either that bowler who's never bowled before and bowls a perfect game.
That's right. That's right.
And they may come back and never score 100 again.
That's good.
or they may be the greatest thing that's come along in a long time. And based on the depth and of her performance and her transitioning in and out of that film, there's something there. And I really thought that it was impressive enough to me that I would give her, that award for that acting job that she did. Once again, for the job that she did on that film, not knowing what's coming next or what had been before, just watching that, it's hard to take anything away from her.
That's right.
I would agree. I think as far as when you hear actors, and for audience members who've never acted before, you hear actors who are actors by craft talk about craft and what that means. Not to see an actor work in a performance, but you see their complete embodiment of a character where you're not seeing the sensibilities of an actress that kind of come through. And sometimes there's synergy between who an actor is and the roles that they play. So I'm not saying that can't happen, but the transformative quality of the Andra Day performance was just really something to behold. And I think it's just one of those once in a lifetime roles where your life experience is matched with the character you play to such a degree that the synthesis is just a beautiful thing to watch. But I agree. Frances McDormand, Carey Mulligan, The Promising Young Woman, I would love to talk about it when we talk about directors, because I really thought that this is a really clever and really smart film. Vanessa Kirby, as you said, I loved in Pieces of a Woman, and I thought I would love to see more of her work. Viola is, she's Viola Davis. I mean, as people love her and worthy of being enamored, but I think this is just a tough group. Baron, what's your take?
Yeah.
No, Andra Day, with her, I think she did boot camp and was pushed into areas that she gave it 200%. She didn't know where she was going, but she trusted the people that guided her into those areas. Because I've heard her talk, and she had to pick up smoking and drinking, and doesn't do all of that. Now that's a little, I don't subscribe to that, but if that's what she needed to do to go there, and she went there, terrific. And she did her own singing. She did her own singing.
That was pretty phenomenal. I'm going to take Andra Day as my pick. If someone upsets, I'm going to go with the upsetter, Frances McDormand. And that is kind of like Hollywood formula. I mean, she's obviously a phenomenal actress, but I think if there's a wild card here, it's going to be Vanessa Kirby. That'll be my wild card pick. So.
And Carey Mulligan, I mean, she's good in what she does, but that's a film. But when we talk about it, I sort of figured it out like early on in the film what was going to happen. But I'd love to talk about that if we have a chance. And I understand that the style of the film, but I had questions about certain things, and maybe that's just from my perspective as a man. So about
the topic of it. Yeah, I found it interestingly storyline. So we'll talk a little bit about, if we have time to go over screenplays. So let's shift to Best Supporting Actor. We have Sasha Baron Cohen in The Trial of the Chicago 7. We have Daniel Kaluuya for Judas and the Black Messiah. Leslie Odom Jr. for One Night in Miami. We have Paul, is it Racy or Rossi?
Well, it's Racy, Paul Racy.
Okay, for Sound of Metal, and Lakeith Stanfield for Judas and the Black Messiah. And these are Best Supporting Actor categories. And as we know, maybe some of the audience members know, maybe not, that there was quite a controversy around Daniel Kaluuya and Lakeith Stanfield being put in as supporting actors instead of lead actors. Because basically, who is the lead actor of the film then if they're both supporting? So very interesting that they were nominated for Best Supporting versus one of them being Best Actor. So predictions, I'm going with Daniel Kaluuya for the win, hands down.
You are?
Setter is going to Sasha Baron Robbery. This is terrible. Not in my vote. I did enjoy his performance in The Trial of Chicago 7. I thought he was fantastic and wonderful in that film. But as far as these performances comparatively here, I'm gonna go with Kaluuya for my pick. What do you think?
I thought that Lakeith did a better job than Kaluuya in the movie. He was terrific with that inner tension. I mean, Kaluuya, so what, he gained a little weight and, he just able to show a couple of colors and all that. I just think that informant role was a pretty tough one to sort of pull off. And I would say Lakeith. That would be my top pick. He'll probably be an upset. He'd be the upset, but I just liked what he did.
Yeah,
I have my own bias against these British actors, so that's a whole nother story. Yeah.
Harvey, what do you?
I've known some snitches in my day. But what I'm gonna say is, I agree, like with what Baron said. There's something about someone who plays a role and you really don't like them because of the role they play, but it's just there. It's just there. He was an icky character, and he maintained that, like not making eye contact with you. It was like he never made eye contact with you because he was doing what he was doing. But there were a couple spots in there where he actually kind of stepped up and was in the fight. And all of a sudden he took on a whole different, composure and everything. And it was very obvious to tell. So he definitely, he put some real consideration into that role he was playing. And when you hear about how it the after effects, so to speak, of playing a role like that, I think it was true because he really portrayed who he was supposed to be, who that character was, and what he represented.
Y'all have convincing
And
arguments.
so I would go with him.
So we have two for as the winner. Is that what we're saying? Just taking a tally here. And one outlier, which that's me, for Daniel Kaluuya. I mean, now having a conversation with you all about the performance, I agree as I kind of track back and think about it, some of the layers that I see in Lakeith's performance, there's a lot of beautiful textures. And I think I was just I'm very drawn to the power of Daniel Kaluuya's performance. But I think if we're looking across the board, there are some really kind of neck and neck subtleties that Lakeith puts in that are remarkable. I did love Sasha Baron Cohen. He played his part beautifully. I love Paul and Sound of Metal. I thought that was just a very delicate and thoughtful, beautiful.
Oh yes, that would be my second choice.
Yeah, it was just so easy, and not easy as a task, but the character that he was playing just had a way of accepting who he was in the world now. And it was just a really beautifully consistent performance. I really loved it.
Yep.
Please, go ahead.
Particularly when he's when he's sitting down with Riz Ahmed's character basically and saying, you know what, you gots to go.
Yeah.
You gots to go. You gots to go. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that was pretty powerful. All along, audience, we encourage you to go out, see these performances. If we have actors watching, this is how you study. These are master classes. And, when people are always worried about getting into paid classes and sitting, you can do half your work at home of actually studying the work and craft of actors. It's free. So there is no access issues, right? Would you agree that studying master performers is a great way to learn how to do what we do? Yeah.
That's right.
That's great. So let's shift to Best Supporting Actress and see what your takes are there. We have Olivia Colman, The Father. Let's see, I'm going to make sure that I have. All right. Okay, so we have our Best Supporting category. We have Maria Baklova and Borat subsequent movie film. We have Glenn Close and Hillbilly Elegy, Olivia Colman and The Father, Amanda Seyfried and Mank, and Woo Jung-un and Minari. Picks. I'm gonna go with Woo Jung-un. I just thought it was a riveting performance. My second is Olivia Colman. I loved Hillbilly Elegy. It's a really tough call for me between Olivia Colman and Glenn Close, but Woo Jung-un was just so. It was just prolific.
And the Academy is probably good. I would love to. They'll give it to him because no one else is going to win in that movie. It's a lovely movie, little small movie, and she did a great job in that.
Yeah, it was really beautiful. Any other? What do you?
I would agree because watching her in that movie, Woo Jung-un, if I'm saying it right, it was like, okay, who is this? Because this is not an actor. This is that person. This is that grandmother, the gambler.
She was
a little bit profane.
Right.
You can see that she's been around the block, so to speak, and she's not playing on B. And so she came with it, and she came with a character that I'd kind of never seen before, in that kind of storyline. Because when I think about traditionally, with in the Asian culture, you have the elders being very revered, and they're very reserved and proper.
That's
right. Well, not anymore. Not after seeing her. They're just like everyone else. They have those people in their families who are like that. And I thought she brought the family structure to be complete, because she was a little bit on the outside looking into this new effort that was being made by this family. But at the same time, she was knowing what they were trying to accomplish. And she just brought what she could to it. Her crop that she planted that ended up surviving because she knew where to put it. Simple as that. She knew where to put it. And I thought she did the same thing with that role. I thought she just was who she was supposed to be. And Glenn Close, though, also kind of in that same vein, she did a tremendous job too. I really enjoyed that Hillbilly Elegy. She would deserve. I would also say deserve to win too. You could not knock any of these actresses in this category.
There's been some press about, I guess, Glenn Close. This is going to be her 8th time up for an award, and is she going to win it? Full disclosure: the first time I slept in a bedroom with my grandmother on my mother's side, I thought that a creature was coming out of her at night when she was snoring. I had never heard anything like that in my life. And in that movie, when the boy is in the bed, that just brought that back to me when his grandmother was snoring up a storm. And throughout all of that stuff, what she did in that role, her love still came through for her grandson. Even when she was drinking whatever he gave her in the cup and everything. You know, her love came through, and it made him love her, and that was just so beautiful to see. It's just so, just wonderful to see. Spot on, Harvey. We don't get a chance to see those kind of characters like that.
Mhm.
That was beautiful to see that. You know.
Well, that's a great segue then, Baron, to say we don't get to see those type of characters. And I think a lot of times in actor speak, you hear actors say, well, when I'm creating my character, well, you don't really create a character. The playwright or the screenwriter creates the character and you play what's there. We add what we add and we subtract what we subtract to do what we need to do. But, we as actors don't create them from the ground up. So that character comes from the screenplay. So what about best screenplay 2021, the nominees? Do you want to talk about those a little bit of some of the best scripts that you saw of these films? If we think about The Father or The Five Bloods, any of these, what would you say stood out to you in the scripts?
Well, The Father was I love the way it was put together because it was reminiscent of another movie that came out about 10 more years ago called Memento.
It was so much like Memento. Yeah, I loved that film.
So I just loved that because we were getting the point of view, certainly in The Father, from Anthony Hopkins' point of view. I just thought it was lovely. It was almost like Pinteresque, the screenplay. With you didn't know who was who really and what was going on, but it was all inside of in his mind. And I thought that, well, there were 2 or 3 writers on Judas and the Black Messiah. That's for sure, because I was looking at the credits and I'm saying, who wrote this script?
Right.
But I loved The Father. I loved it. I cried twice. Come on,
That's great. I loved it too. I love the fact that it was really allowing us to go through his journey of how he was seeing the world and, how he was so secure in what he was feeling and he saw. I think it just gave all of us a window into, how helpless you might feel.
That's right.
And it was just, it built great empathy with the audience. And so I really loved it. Any favorite screenplays for you, Harvey?
What is it, Minari? That story, when I think about the story, he had his family moving to Arkansas,
Mm-hmm.
kind of out of the element. They went from California where they were kind of in the element, had a community, moved to Arkansas because the father, he wanted to be his own person. He wanted to cultivate and grow.
Yes.
The wife was so hesitant. She wanted to get back to tradition, and or at least to some level of comfort, where they knew people. And the grandson, their son, he was just kind of like in the mix. New place, new people. Then the people that were in. I just like the story from the standpoint that it just took 2 different worlds, and as is the case, you don't know what you're really going to get.
Sure.
They managed to avoid showing too much any kind of racism, I think, which I made me kind of wonder about. They had to run into some, so the kind of acceptance was a little bit like. They could have tempered that out, I think, a little bit to make it more real.
Particularly out there.
The storyline and the characters, I thought were, for an original work, I liked it. Yeah.
The only time you saw that in that was when the white kid came over to the grandson and said, "Why is your face so flat?"
Yeah.
So black. Yeah.
Terrible. Indicative of the type of Orientalism and anti-Asian racism that many people don't understand has been part of American race relations for since the country's inception. But I mean, this moment that we're in right now with anti-Asian violence is really a huge part of American history that people don't realize and
That's
seem
right.
shocked by. But I think, you know, coming from California and being part of a culture that has a lot of pan-Asian identity, that's part of the culture of California, I think people have a little bit more literacy, you know, out west than they do in other places, like now living in the Midwest. So, you know, I think Minari is a beautiful, beautiful film. It's an important American story. It's important to tell a story about, you know, coming into your family and what your hopes and aspirations are as Americans, you know, and a space that people don't think would look like you know, when you think about Arkansas. And so I think it's, you know, it's up for Best Original Screenplay, along with Judas and the Black Messiah, which Barron talked about. Promising Young Woman is another one. And I think this was a very interesting film. Sound of Metal and The Trial of the Chicago Seven. Those are our nominees for original screenplay. And any favorites of these? I'm going to say Minari for the win for me, or Sound of Metal, as far as just sheer genius and interest of the screenplay for me.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're.
Yeah, yeah. You know, I have a little bit of a problem with original screenplays when they're based on known stories. I guess,
Right.
you know,
Like
so some of the original from the creative standpoint, that's not an original thought. You know, the trial of the Chicago Seven, that's history.
Right.
And so you take that and you develop story around the characters and people like that. Whereas an original screenplay to me is this idea, and you're seeing what became of this idea and how it formed. You know, there was no preface to it, so to speak. You know, you just jumped into the story, and at the end of it, you're like, oh, that was great, that was good, or whatever. And so that's why I kind of lean toward, even though the other films were great, I lean toward the originality of the idea of the story.
Sure. And a lot of some of the more original ideas that we talked about, The Father, and was an adaptation, and that is for Best Adapted Screenplay. So, you know, those are some of the original. One Night in Miami, as many of us know, is adapted from a play. Mm-hmm. The Father, also adaptation. So these are up for Best Adapted Screenplay. And I think, you know, this is a grab bag of possibilities because of the different types of films they are. There's not kind of any one thematic that highlights any of the best screenplay nominations. So,
you know, I believe that the voting has been done. I'm not sure when the deadline is for when the voting. I think the voting has been done, and if it hasn't been done, there has to be taken into account what is happening in this country with the anti-Asian backlash right now. And it's horrible. And that Minari was a human story of folks, the same way that when, you know, white folks, somebody would say, that's my uncle up there, or that's this and that, and this, you know what I mean? So that was just a beautiful lens into this human story told through that culture that those people were, you know, dealing with.
Well, beautiful. I mean, I think, like I said, it's a beautiful American story, and understanding that American stories are not just coming from a predominantly white perspective. When we think about great American cinema,
that's right.
Thinking about great stories that are told from Asian American, Indigenous, African, Pacific Islander, all experiences. We all live in America, and we are all part of this story. So I think it's important that we're not shocked every time we see a story that doesn't center American story in Arkansas. We're always like,
right.
Yes. You know, it's a problem. Well, let's think about the best director. Shifting, many of the stories that we're talking about in screenplay also have director nominations attached. So we have another round is really one of the only films that isn't nominated in the other categories, but is nominated for Best Directing. So Thomas Vinterberg for Another Round. And then, you know, so that was a very challenging film for me. But aesthetically, I thought was very interesting. But the topic was not something that I could really kind of get drawn into. So it was a challenge for me. Did anyone else see Another Round?
Yeah, Another Round. Am I mistaken, or was it listed as a comedy drama?
I would have to go and look that up, and if I do, I'll put it in the credit. I'll put it here on the monitor when we.
Because it did have its humor in it, but it also had a very dark side to it.
Sure. Yeah.
With the effects, obvious effects, and interventions that you saw coming and maybe going, and then it had a little bit of that Full Monty feel to it, where the camaraderie, where if you're going to be drunk, we'll all be drunk, and that kind of thing. So it was interesting, and so from that standpoint on the directing, I thought they did a great job with it, because it was certainly you didn't get comfortable with it. I didn't, watching it, and at first it was just from very nonchalant, seeing what this is about, to being drawn into it, to then actually seeing these different characters and what they're going through and things like that. So, yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, this is a historic director category, really, when you have two Asian directors being nominated. I think this is, unsettling kind of the normative whiteness of the director category that the Academy is so comfortable with. And I hope that they will see more opportunity to nominate other directors of color that also are simultaneously women or non-binary folks, because I think that there's such a hegemony in the Academy over directing in the category in particular. It's male and it's usually European. So we have Emerald Fennell being nominated, and we have two women nominated, which is fantastic. Emerald Fennell for Promising Young Woman, David Fincher for Mank, Lee Isaac Chung for Minari, and Chloe Zhao for Nomadland. This is a pretty cool lineup, and to see two women nominated means that we are making some progress. We hope it will last, and it's not a trend.
That's interesting. The director for Judas and the Black Messiah did not get nominated.
Right, absolutely. And, I think there's something to be said about the criteria and decision-making processes, transparency of why particularly Black directors are excised from this category historically. And the fact that we could all name the Black directors who've ever been nominated in this category and have not won. Barry Jenkins, didn't we get, yeah, right. So I think it's important for us to kind of think about that. But Emerald Fennell, I love Promising Young Woman. I thought it was fun. I thought it was campy. I thought it had all of those great qualities. I didn't understand it as a tour de force as a director. You know what I mean? It didn't strike me where I was like, oh, wow, look at the visual, or look at this performance that this director's getting out of this woman. But I think navigating the violence was probably the most compelling of how she has to really deal with the fact that women address this violence every day. It's part of our everyday life.
What was
interesting to me. Yeah, please go ahead, Barry.
I totally agree with you, but I sat there and watched this and I understood the style she was doing. But then if a woman places herself in that situation with these men that she doesn't know, because she's pretending to be drunk so they can take her home or whatever, what happens if one of those men becomes a psycho and turns on her?
Right. I mean, that's also victim or potential victim blaming. Like, this is I think that's potentially why she did it, was to create all the scenarios that blame victims of sexual assault. They come up with ideas of, look at what you wore. Why would you go there? Why would you dress this way? Why would you put yourself in this
Oh,
situation?
no, not that. I mean, like in the exchange, like for instance, I think it was the second guy. He's a comic. He was great. He was the one that was blowing the coke, and he was wonderful. I thought he did a wonderful performance. And then when she turned to him and he says, what is going on here? I said, it would be interesting, and not if all of a sudden somebody matched her, because they were, and I don't even necessarily mean that somebody would get physical with her, but somebody would match her and not step down. You know,
right. I think that giving her the power was part of the dynamic of the film.
Sure.
Right? The fact that women are, I mean, we're often have the expectation of violence, verbal violence, physical violence. We're not allowed to be in spaces being ourselves, or as you saw the setup where the women, she was, very inebriated in a place, and the expectation, she knew that men were going to approach her to take advantage of her. And that fact that was a modus that she tracked over time was part of the brilliance of the script. It wasn't just these one-off situations. It was, this is a modus for people of deciding, wow, vulnerable woman, this is the time for us. In fact, a whole group of men decide that she's a target. So, I mean, I thought that part of the script was quite brilliant, but I think that this kind of echoes like a 1980s feminist argument that hasn't quite advanced, right? To put yourself in the position of the male aggressor and then to embody those same violent tactics. I don't know if I agree with that as a strategy to counter the violence, right? I'm going to be just as violent.
But didn't she also placed that first woman, her ex-medical school friend, in that situation? I mean, when she...
Right. Yeah, but I think it has a lot to do with the internalized psychosis, right? That happens as a result, because she wasn't well.
Sure. Yeah, right, exactly.
She was not well, this young woman. So, but I appreciate Emerald Fennell, and I really am so excited that she's nominated, and I think it's a good story. I think all of these are worthy directors. I loved Minari. I think it's a standout of all of the aesthetics and experiences I had in all of these nominees. I would say Minari was the one that touched my heart the most. What about you as director? Any of these performances, do you feel, as a job, as a director, did anyone tease together? I felt like the director for The Father should have been nominated.
Yeah.
Because it was a phenomenal.
Yeah, director, that's always been a tough one for me, because I haven't done that much directing, so to speak, other than some of my own things that I've written. But to see what you actually have to work with and the outcome, and knowing that the director is the connector, yeah, I think it's a tough, choice when you look at some of these films, because they all came across so powerfully, for the most part, that the director had to be in sync with the main characters and different people. And so, yeah, when you look at like The Father, and you look at Minari, and even Nomadland, all of those, there had to be some connection there, and some style decisions and things like that. So yeah, it would be a tough call for me on directors.
Did either?
Yeah, Florian Zeller directed The Father, and I just felt that all around the performances were even. They were connected. There wasn't too much. It wasn't too little. I felt it was just a beautifully directed film. But I'm going to go with Minari. Probably will win. At least that's kind of what my projection is. So we will all check back on this.
It's interesting that, and I didn't see it, but I'm going to watch it in a couple of days if I have time. Jodie Foster's film.
I didn't see it either. really wanted to, and so, but it did well in the Golden Globes. So, Screen Actors Guild Awards are this weekend, so we'll see how things fare then. I think the fourth, I want to say they're the fourth Screen Actors Guild Awards.
Third or the fourth.
So by the time this airs, all of this will be over except for the Oscars. So just keep that in mind. So we're going to go with Best Picture and think about where we are for Best Picture nominees. Okay, I'm gonna pause. Oh, okay, let's see, we're bringing that up. So we're pulling up the listings for Best Picture. Any predictions? I'm gonna go with Nomadland. It's not my pick of personal favorite, but I do predict that it will win. So if I'm picking horses, I'm going to say that it's going to be Nomadland. Any other predictions?
Well, my industry bet would be Ben-Hur.
Right. Of course, because that's so relevant.
Yeah.
Yep.
But this year, I'm going to break tradition. And I'm going to go with Minari. I'm sorry. Between that and The Father, it's got to be one of those two. It just has to be.
Let's see. I'll pull them up for you, and we will run through them one more time. So Baron, just read them to us one more time so the audience knows what we're voting on for our picks for Best
Picture nominations. The Father, Judas and the Black Messiah, Mank, Minari, Nomadland, Promising Young Woman, Sound of Metal, The Trial of the Chicago 7.
All right, and the winner is, I'm going to go with, I'm gonna go with Nomadland. I mean, not my personal favorite. My personal favorite is Minari. So I'm going to trust, if all the gods were working in the favor of actual goodness, then I would say I would pick Minari. Because the gods don't work that way when it comes to Hollywood, I'm Dorman. Whenever she's attached to something, it seems to be gold. So I'm going to go with that. Harvey, what do you think?
I'm going to go with Minari.
Boldly, you went out with a Minari.
And if Minari doesn't...
No teaser, nothing. I love it.
Yep. I'm going with Minari because it should win. If it doesn't win, then The Father should win.
That's what I said.
And if one of those two don't win, then I'm not really interested. Because
I'm not. I hear you on that. I absolutely hear you on that.
Because when you look at content, you know, the performances that go to make up the movie, you know, what makes the movie. You look at all those things, and I gotta say, between those two, I just feel like one of those should be Best Picture. Minari first, The Father second. All
right, we've got two for Minari. One, mine. If you look at mine had several caveats. So,
I'll have to say Minari because I have a lot of dear friends of mine who are Asian, and I know how they felt about this movie. And
you can't go with some of my friends are Asian argument.
Well, but these people, no, they don't get a chance to see themselves portrayed. You know, what was it, 2 years ago when they had that film Crazy Rich Asians?
That was brilliant. But I think what you're saying is important that if we're building solidarity with other historically
that's right
groups in the United States, we should be cheering as Black people for our Asian and Asian American brothers and sisters who are having a really beautiful moment within a horrific year of Asian violence as a result of all the horrible rhetoric around this pandemic, et cetera. So this is true solidarity, is not us or them, but both and
that's
us.
Right, both and. That's it. Absolutely. That's beautiful. Beautifully put.
Yeah, so we've got three Minari, and we're gonna stick to our guns, as they say. or at least my grandma said. So, so we're coming to the end of our show, and we promise you an hour, and sometimes we ramble, but we're good-hearted and intended. What do you think? Any closing remarks? If the gods come together, we will have a live episode where we are watching the Oscars live and talking to you about what we're seeing, outfits, who's won, who's been robbed, all that good stuff. So stay tuned. We will announce if we'll be live or if we will record the live episode and play it back to you. Any closing words, Harvey or Baron, as we wrap up?
Good luck to
No,
nominees.
Harvey?
I'm just, sorry that we won't be able to see Baron on the red carpet this year, but I'm looking forward to the awards.
I've got a red carpet story, but that's it for another time.
It's not over. It's not over. We all have to keep the Cicely Tyson spirit that any one of us still has a shot to be nominated, but we lift up awards. The NAACP awards just were on. We lift up Black award shows that are lauding the work of Black performers and technicians, and they're very important awards. So by no means do we think the Academy Awards have any superior value.
That's right.
Let's understand that within our field, that this is a moment of it's kind of the Super Bowl for acting. And I'm hoping that eventually we will look at our NAACP awards as our Super Bowl for performance. And so that's another show and another conversation. Well, we're going to thank you all for watching. We appreciate you guys going over to YouTube, watching the episodes, telling your friends about them, because we have fun. And hopefully you have fun listening to us and
learn some things too.
Learning, and we learn from each other, and we learn from you. We're not perfect. We're not trying to have a perfect show. We're just trying to have a real show where we talk about things as we see them. So I'm signing off. Baron, Harvey, sign off, because it's always me at the end, and I want people to see you. So you have to say something for the camera zoom.
See you next time.
Good, great.
Okay, looking forward to what's coming.
All right. Without further ado, we will see you next show. Thank you so much for watching the Black Performance Project. I'm Nicole Hodges Persley. Thank you. Bye-bye.